Did you know that a convicted murderer named the world's largest island just to trick people into moving there? Or that the United States tried to buy it twice, once for $100 million, and once because a sitting president simply decided he wanted it? Or that right now, buried under 2 miles of ice, there's an abandoned American nuclear missile base slowly leaking radioactive waste into a glacier? Greenland is one of the most fascinating, most misunderstood, and most strategically important places on the entire planet. And most people could not tell you 5 facts about it. That changes right now. Here are 50 facts about Greenland. Fact 50: Greenland is the largest island on Earth. Not the largest country, not the largest territory. The largest island, full stop. It covers roughly 2.16 million square kilometers, making it about 3 times the size of Texas. The only reason it does not hold that title outright is that geographers classify Australia as a continent rather than an island. Remove Australia from the competition, and Greenland wins by a staggering margin. Fact 49. Despite being the biggest island in the world, Greenland has a population of roughly 57,000 people, fewer than many mid-sized American suburbs. The population density works out to about 0.026 people per square kilometer, making it the least densely populated territory on Earth. Think about that. The largest island on the planet has fewer people living in it than the city of Bismarck, North Dakota. Fact 48. The name Greenland is one of the most successful pieces of false advertising in recorded history. It was named by a Norse explorer named Eric the Red around the year 985. Eric had been exiled from Iceland for manslaughter following a violent feud, and when he arrived on this massive, mostly frozen landmass, he called it Greenland. Not because it was green, but because he believed a good name would attract settlers. The tactic worked, and the name stuck for over 1,000 years. Fact 47. Iceland and Greenland are essentially switched. Iceland, the country named for ice, is temperate, green, and geothermally active. Greenland, named for green, is roughly 80% covered by a permanent ice sheet. The 2 islands sit close enough together in the North Atlantic that this irony has confused people for centuries. Historians say it is most likely just the result of 2 separate Viking naming decisions made in 2 very different situations. Fact 46. The Greenland ice sheet is the second largest body of ice on Earth, surpassed only by Antarctica. It covers more than 700,000 square miles of the island's surface, with an average thickness of about 1,500 meters. At its thickest point, it reaches roughly 3,000 meters, close to 2 miles straight down. Scientists estimate it is between 400,000 and 800,000 years old, having survived multiple ice ages and everything the planet has thrown at it. Fact 45. If that ice sheet melted completely, global sea levels would rise by approximately 7.4 meters, about 24 feet. Miami, Amsterdam, Mumbai, Shanghai, New Orleans, all partially or entirely underwater. The ice sheet is not going to melt overnight, but it is shrinking at an accelerating rate. In 2012, satellites recorded that 97% of it showed surface melting in a single mid-year period, a figure that stunned researchers worldwide. Fact 44. Underneath all that ice is a canyon that rivals the Grand Canyon in depth and surpasses it dramatically in length. Scientists using ice-penetrating radar found it running roughly 750 kilometers from central Greenland to the northern coast, nearly twice the distance from Washington, District of Columbia, to New York City. It formed millions of years ago from rivers cutting through bedrock, long before the ice sheet existed, and sat completely hidden until modern radar revealed it. Fact 43. Greenland sits on top of one of the most significant mineral deposits on the planet. A 2023 report found it contains 25 of the 34 minerals classified as critical raw materials by the European Commission. Rare earth elements, cobalt, lithium, nickel, copper, gold, and uranium. These are essential for wind turbines, electric vehicles, smartphones, and guided weapon systems. One deposit near the southern town of Narsak alone is estimated to hold 12 million tons of rare earth metals. Fact 42. China currently controls roughly 85% of the global supply of rare earth minerals. That single fact explains more about the sudden intense interest in Greenland from the United States and Western powers than almost anything else. The minerals beneath Greenland's ice are not just economically valuable, they are strategically essential to every major technology transition underway right now. Whoever gains reliable access to those deposits will hold enormous leverage over the global supply chain for decades. Fact 41. The United States has tried to buy Greenland twice. In 1946, President Harry Truman offered Denmark $100 million for the island, citing military necessity. Denmark refused. Decades later, President Donald Trump publicly expressed interest in purchasing it, a proposal that drew mockery from Danish and Greenlandic officials alike. Greenland's government was blunt. The island is not for sale. And the crazy thing is, the idea was not even new in 1946. After buying Alaska from Russia in 1867, Secretary of State William Seward had already called acquiring Greenland worthy of serious consideration. Fact 40. Greenland is geographically part of North America. The island sits on the North American tectonic plate, separated from Canada's Ellesmere Island by the narrow Nares Strait. And yet politically and culturally, it has been tied to Europe for over 1,000 years. An autonomous territory of Denmark, with its foreign and defense policies handled by Copenhagen. Geographically American, politically European. Greenland exists in a category entirely its own. Fact 39. Greenland gained home rule from Denmark in 1979, then expanded its autonomy significantly in 2009 following a referendum where roughly 75% of voters chose greater self-governance. Greenland now controls healthcare, education, natural resources, and law enforcement. Denmark handles foreign policy, defense, and the currency, and provides an annual block grant worth several $100 million that funds a large portion of the government's operations. Fact 38. The question of full independence is very much alive. Many Greenlanders want it. The challenge is purely economic. Without a replacement for the Danish block grant, an independent government cannot sustain itself. But here's where it gets interesting. The mineral wealth beneath the ice could change that calculation entirely. That is why the independence conversation has grown louder, in direct proportion to how loudly the world has started talking about Greenland's resources. The ice melting is not just an environmental story. For many Greenlanders, it is the opening they have been waiting for. Fact 37. Fishing is the backbone of Greenland's economy. Shrimp and halibut account for more than 90% of exports. The surrounding waters are extraordinarily rich, cold, nutrient-dense, and historically abundant. In recent decades, rising ocean temperatures have pushed fish populations northward, creating both new opportunities and serious disruptions for communities whose entire lives are built around the rhythms of the sea. Fact 36. Greenland has no roads connecting its towns. None. Every settlement is an isolated outpost, accessible only by boat, plane, helicopter, dog sled, or snowmobile. Traveling between towns usually requires a flight. Moving goods between communities is extraordinarily expensive. Boats are the most common transport in the warmer months, navigating the deep fjords that cut into the coastline from every direction. Fact 35. The capital of Greenland is Nuuk, one of the smallest capital cities in the world. Roughly 19,000 people live there, about a third of Greenland's entire population. It sits at the mouth of a vast fjord system on the southwestern coast, backed by mountains. and edges out Reykjavik for the title of northernmost capital city on Earth. For its size, Nuuk punches well above its weight. It has museums, restaurants, a cultural center, and a university. Fact 34. Nuuk was founded in 1721 by a Norwegian-Danish missionary named Hans Egede, who had sailed to Greenland convinced that Norse descendants might still be living there in isolation. He found no Norse survivors, only the Inuit people who had inhabited the island for centuries. He spent the rest of his life learning their language and is still considered the founder of modern Greenland. Fact 33. The Inuit have lived in Greenland for roughly 4,500 years, though not continuously. The earliest known inhabitants, the Sakak people, arrived around 2,500 before the Common Era and eventually died out. The Dorset culture followed and also disappeared. The Thule people, ancestors of today's Greenlandic Inuit, arrived around the year 1000 and spread across the entire habitable coastline. They are the direct forebears of roughly 90% of Greenland's population and outlasted every other group that tried to settle the island, including the Norse. Fact 32. The Norse did settle Greenland. Eric the Red established the first European colony around 985, and at its peak the Norse population may have reached several thousand. They built farms, raised livestock, and maintained communities for nearly 500 years. Then, in the early 1400s, they simply vanished. No massacre, no dramatic collapse, just silence. Historians point to the Little Ice Age, declining trade with Europe, and a stubborn refusal to adopt the survival techniques the Inuit had spent centuries perfecting. Fact 31. The official language of Greenland is West Greenlandic, also known as Kala-Alisut. It is polysynthetic. A single word can carry the meaning of an entire sentence in English. Two other Greenlandic dialects exist, East Greenlandic and the Northern Inuktun, and they are so different from one another that speakers of one cannot understand speakers of the others. A United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization report has labeled both minority dialects as endangered. Fact 30. The words kayak, igloo, and anorak all come from the Inuit language. The kayak was a narrow hunting vessel for silent Arctic navigation. The igloo was a field shelter whose interior, warmed by body heat alone, could stay well above freezing in brutal cold. The anorak was a hooded garment built for wind and moisture in extreme conditions. All three were refined over thousands of years of Arctic survival and eventually adopted by the rest of the world. Fact 29. Greenland has no railway system and never has. The only infrastructure linking communities is a network of air routes and coastal shipping lanes. For smaller and more remote settlements, helicopter service is often the only viable option when winter sea ice closes the water routes entirely. The logistics of ordinary daily life in Greenland require a level of planning and resilience that most people in the connected world simply never have to think about. Fact 28. Greenland experiences the midnight sun. From roughly late May through late July, the sun does not set above the Arctic Circle. It circles the horizon continuously, keeping the sky bright all day and night. At the island's northernmost point, continuous daylight lasts nearly 4 months. June 21st, the summer solstice, is a national holiday celebrated with outdoor gatherings, traditional music, and dancing. Fact 27. The flip side is polar night. In winter, the far north of Greenland receives no direct sunlight for months. The town of Qaanaaq goes without direct sunlight from November through February. Residents live in near total darkness, with only a faint blue twilight around midday. Communities that endure polar night have developed deep traditions around light, warmth, and gathering that carry people through the darkest stretch of the year. Fact 26. Greenland is one of the best places on Earth to see the northern lights. The aurora borealis is visible from virtually anywhere on the island during the winter months, with the best window running from late September through March. Greenland sits deep within the auroral zone. On a clear night, the lights are nearly guaranteed. Fact 25. Greenland contains the world's largest national park. The Northeast Greenland National Park covers approximately 972,000 square kilometers, larger than most countries, and has 0 permanent human residents. The entire northeastern region is protected wilderness the size of Egypt, home to polar bears, musk oxen, Arctic foxes, and walruses, patrolled only by scientific expeditions and a small military presence. Fact 24. The Ilulissat Ice Fjord on the west coast is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization World Heritage Site, and one of the most spectacular natural sites on Earth. It is fed by the Yaekubshan Glacier, one of the fastest-moving glaciers in the world, which calves icebergs at a nearly constant rate. Some are large enough to be tracked by satellite. Many of the icebergs that eventually drift into North Atlantic shipping lanes begin their journey right here. Fact 23. The Yaekubshan Glacier is widely believed to be the source of the iceberg that sank the Titanic in April 1912. Icebergs from this glacier travel south through the Davis Strait and into the North Atlantic over months to years, following drift patterns consistent with placing a large berg exactly where the Titanic struck. It cannot be confirmed with certainty, but the geographic and timing evidence is compelling enough that this glacier is the most commonly cited origin point. Fact 22. Greenland holds some of the oldest exposed rock on Earth. The Isua Greenstone Belt in the west contains formations dating back approximately 3.8 billion years, among the most ancient surface rocks ever found anywhere on the planet. Earth itself is roughly 4.5 billion years old. Scientists study these formations to understand the earliest conditions under which life may have appeared, making Greenland a literal archive of planetary origins. Fact 21. Greenland experiences some of the most extreme temperature swings on Earth. The interior ice sheet has recorded temperatures as low as -69.6 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, sheltered valleys in the south can reach above 20 degrees Celsius in summer, warm enough for short sleeves. That is a swing of nearly 90 degrees across the same island, creating pockets of surprising biodiversity in the southern coastal regions, where wildflowers, shrubs, and even small trees grow during the brief warm season. Fact 20. Greenland has hot springs. Near a place in the south called Unertak, naturally heated thermal pools sit surrounded by icebergs and glacial scenery. The water stays around 37 degrees Celsius, warm enough to bathe in comfortably. Sitting in a naturally heated pool while enormous icebergs drift past in the fjord is something most visitors say they were not prepared for. Fact 19. 67% of Greenland's electricity comes from renewable energy, the vast majority of it hydropower. The island's mountainous terrain, heavy snowfall, and reliable glacial meltwater make it exceptionally well suited for hydroelectric generation. For a place so often discussed in terms of fossil fuels and resource extraction, the energy profile of daily Greenlandic life is actually among the cleanest in the world. Fact 18. Greenland has a 160-kilometer wilderness hiking trail called the Arctic Circle Trail, running from Kangerlussuaq to Sisimiut. 9 small huts are spaced roughly a day's walk apart. There are no resupply points. Hikers carry everything for the full route. You can walk for an entire day without seeing another person even in peak summer. It has become one of the most respected long-distance trails in the world. Fact 17. Tourism has grown from a niche activity to an industry welcoming roughly 100,000 visitors per year. People come for dog sledding, iceberg cruises, northern lights viewing, and glacier hikes. The growth has created genuine economic opportunity, but it has also sparked serious conversations about managing visitor numbers without damaging the landscapes and traditions that make the island worth visiting in the first place. Fact 16. Greenlandic society is extraordinarily progressive. Education is free. Healthcare is free. The country has some of the most extensive legal protections for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people anywhere in the world. And here is the part that gets people. All of this exists in one of the most remote, logistically demanding environments on Earth, in communities where hunting, fishing, and dog sled culture are still part of daily life. Fact 15. In many parts of Greenland, sled dogs are working animals under strict legal protections. In the northern and eastern regions, it is illegal to bring non-sled dog breeds into certain areas to preserve the Greenland dog, one of the oldest and most genetically distinct breeds in the world. These animals live outside year-round, sleep in the snow, and are bred for endurance, strength, and cold tolerance. They are not pets. They are infrastructure. Fact 14. The colorful houses of Greenland were originally a practical coding system. Red for churches, yellow for hospitals, blue for fish factories, green for telephone companies. Workers could identify buildings at a distance across snow without needing to read a sign. Today, homeowners paint freely, but the tradition of vivid, saturated colors has stayed embedded in Greenlandic architecture and become one of the island's most recognizable visual signatures. Fact 13. Greenland voted to leave the European Economic Community in 1982, one of the only territories in history to do so, and decades before, the United Kingdom made that concept globally famous. The objection was fishing rights. Greenlandic voters decided that protecting control over their own waters mattered more than membership. The exit took effect in 1985, and Greenland has operated under a special fisheries agreement with the European Union ever since. Fact 12. And here's the part the story usually skips. While the world was watching Greenland's fishing boats and debating its political status, something far darker was happening inside the island's clinics. In the 1960s and 1970s, Danish authorities carried out a mass forced contraception program targeting Greenlandic Inuit women and girls. An estimated 4,500 women and girls, roughly half of all fertile females on the island, were fitted with intrauterine devices, often without their knowledge or consent. Girls as young as 12 were taken from school for the procedures. The birth rate collapsed from approximately 7 children per woman to 2.3 in just 8 years, the fastest recorded fertility decline in human history. In 2022, the Danish government announced a formal investigation. Fact 11. During the forced urbanization of Greenland in the mid-20th century, the Danish government pushed Inuit communities to abandon traditional villages and move into towns. The goal was modernization. The result was cultural devastation. Families who had lived self-sufficient lives tied to the land and sea for generations found themselves in cities with no social support and no way to use the skills their lives had been built around. The mental health consequences were severe and lasting, contributing to suicide rates that remain among the highest in the world today. Fact 10. Beneath the ice of northwestern Greenland sits an abandoned American military base called Camp Century. Built in 1959 by the United States Army Corps of Engineers, it was carved into the ice sheet through 21 underground tunnels and powered by the world's first portable military nuclear reactor. Publicly, it was a scientific research station, and it did produce real science, including the first ice core ever drilled completely through a glacier to the bedrock. But that was not its real purpose. Fact 9. The real purpose was a classified program called Project Iceworm. The plan was to thread up to 600 nuclear-tipped missiles through 2,100 silos across 52,000 square miles of Greenland's ice, close enough to strike the Soviet Union, shuffled constantly to prevent targeting. The program was kept secret from Denmark, which had a declared nuclear-free policy. Project Iceworm was abandoned when the ice moved faster than anticipated and began crushing the tunnels. The public did not learn of it until documents were declassified in the mid-1990s. Fact 8. When Camp Century was decommissioned in 1967, the military left behind roughly 200,000 liters of diesel fuel, 24 million liters of untreated sewage, polychlorinated biphenyls, and radioactive coolant, all buried in the ice under the assumption that perpetual snowfall would seal it away forever. That assumption is now in serious doubt. Climate models suggest that as early as 2090, warming temperatures could melt the ice above the site enough to release those contaminants into the environment. Who is responsible for cleaning it up? The United States or Denmark remains unresolved. Fact 7. In January 1968, a United States Air Force Boeing B-52 carrying 4 hydrogen bombs crashed near Thule Air Base on Greenland's northwestern coast. The plane caught fire, the crew ejected, and the aircraft went down on the sea ice of North Star Bay. 3 of the 4 nuclear weapons were recovered. The 4th was never found. The crash contaminated the area with radioactive material, and Danish cleanup workers reported serious long-term health consequences. The incident became a major political scandal in both Denmark and Greenland when its full details became public. Fact 6. Greenland's ice sheet contains a record of Earth's atmospheric history going back hundreds of thousands of years. As snow compresses into ice over millennia, it traps tiny air bubbles, samples of the atmosphere exactly as it existed when each layer formed. By analyzing those bubbles, scientists can reconstruct ancient carbon dioxide levels, temperatures, and volcanic events with extraordinary precision. The ice cores drilled at Camp Century, despite the base's darker purpose, are still being cited in climate research today. Fact 5. Greenland was completely ice-free as recently as 400,000 years ago. Scientists know this because the Camp Century cores contained frozen soil at the very bottom, ancient plant material locked in the ice ever since. It confirmed that the ice sheet had collapsed entirely during a previous warm period. And the crazy thing is, the conditions that drove that collapse were less extreme than the warming currently underway. That finding has fundamentally changed how scientists think about the long-term stability of the ice sheet. Fact 4. Greenland has its own language, its own parliament, its own flag, its own time zones, and a cultural identity that has almost nothing in common with Denmark beyond a political relationship forged through colonization. Greenland's parliament and elected government handle domestic affairs independently of Copenhagen, operating as a fully functioning self-governing administration with its own cabinet ministers and legislative process. The flag, adopted in 1985, is a bold design in white and red with a circle representing both the sun and an iceberg in a fjord. In Greenlandic, the island is called Kalaallit Nunaat, the land of the people, named by the people who actually live there. Fact 3. Beneath the ice, scientists have found a meteor impact crater 31 kilometers wide, larger than the city of Paris, buried under nearly a kilometer of ice near the Hiawatha Glacier in the northwest. The discovery was published in 2018 after researchers analyzing radar data noticed a massive circular depression beneath the ice. The size suggests a meteor, roughly 1.5 kilometers across, struck at that location, with consequences that would have been catastrophic across the northern hemisphere. The precise age of the impact is still being studied. Fact 2. Greenland is at the center of one of the most consequential geopolitical competitions of the 21st century. The melting ice is opening new Arctic shipping routes. The exposed minerals are essential to green energy and defense technology. The island's position between North America and Europe makes it critical for surveillance and strategic infrastructure. The United States, China, Russia, and the European Union are all maneuvering for influence over what happens here in the decades ahead. And the 57,000 people who live on this island are watching all of it from the most dramatic front row seat on Earth. Fact 1. Greenland may be approaching the most significant transformation in its history. The independence movement is real. The mineral wealth is real. The strategic importance is real. The pressure from outside powers is real. For the first time in centuries, Greenland is not a remote island at the edge of the world. It is the subject of conversations in Washington, Beijing, Brussels, and Copenhagen. And through all of it, the Greenlandic people are doing what the Inuit have always done, adapting to conditions that would defeat almost anyone else, on their terms, in their land, under skies that light up green and white in the dead of winter, just as they have for thousands of years. That is 50 facts about Greenland. If you learned something today, hit that subscribe button. We have got a lot more ground to cover, and we are just getting started.